it's really great to have the key role players in the media here with us this evening, and particularly as we reach this key milestone as 24 days away from the crucial elections. The first votes will be cast on the 17th and 18th of May, but the election itself will obviously is 24 days away, and we're obviously looking forward to seeing that particular few weeks unfold. So the purpose of this event this evening is to share with you, of course, the new advert that'll be airing this evening and going forward, and it'll be on radio and various other TV and various other social media platforms. And the message conveyed in the 30-second spot sounds probably the most urgent warning in our constitutional democracy since 1994, which is why we also felt it would warrant a proper engagement with all of you here this evening. So what you will see in this advert is a symbolic representation of the future that awaits South Africa if people do not vote in the correct manner in the upcoming election. It's a warning of what the country's future will look like under a doomsday coalition between the ANC, the EFF, and perhaps also the MK and various other smaller parties like the Patriotic Alliance. Before we air the piece, I wanted to take you back, however, to April last year to the DA's Federal Congress. And at this event, I became one of the first leaders to warn South Africa about the potential ANC-EFF doomsday coalition that could well arise after the 2024 election. And I want to just read for you a bit of the speech that I made on that day in April last year, what I said at the time, and I quote, "The Doomsday Coalition will expropriate property without compensation and abolish private property rights. The Doomsday Coalition will nationalize and destroy foreign investment, businesses, banks, and mines. The Doomsday Coalition will plunge this country into an ethnic and racial conflict, the likes of which it has never witnessed before. The cold, hard truth is that the Doomsday Coalition between the ANC and the EFF has already taken over Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni with the help of its small proxy parties. And next year, it will be knocking on the doors of the union buildings. And this is a fact that should send shivers down the spine of every patriot and freedom-loving person in this country," unquote. Since the DA became the first party to warn about the imminent danger posed by an ANC-EFF coalition, not only to our economy but to our very democracy, a series of events have only heightened this risk. Since I first outlined it 13 months ago, the working relationship between the ANC and the EFF has deepened in places like Ekurhuleni, Johannesburg, and Nelson Mandela Bay. In every single place where the Doomsday Coalition already governs in South Africa, the consequences have been, frankly, catastrophic. Basic service delivery has collapsed, looting runs rampant, taps run dry, electricity doesn't ever come on after load shedding ends, and life gets harder for everyone. And despite this overwhelming evidence, there are still some amongst the analysts who've tried to dismiss these warnings as what they call scaremongering. But the message I want to say this evening is that scaremongering is only scaremongering when it's untrue. In South Africa today, it is a cold, hard fact that the ANC and EFF already co-govern with each other in some of the most important cities in our country. And as the national and provincial elections have approached, there's been an even rapid further toenadering that we've seen happening between the ANC and the EFF. We've seen it here in Gauteng, where the ANC's Panyaza Lesufi is clearly busy setting the table to go into a coalition with the EFF at a provincial level. This will mean that the industrial heartland of South Africa will be under the control of the radical populists who will destroy what's left of Gauteng's economy. We now also have the leader of the EFF, Julius Malema, on the record that the EFF will give its vote to the ANC on the conditions that property is expropriated without compensation, that mines are nationalized, and that Floyd Shivambu, the very person implicated in the looting of the VBS Bank, becomes the finance minister of the Republic. Just this past week, we had the president of COSATU, Zingiswa Losi, a key ANC alliance partner, openly saying that they want, and I quote, a leftist coalition, unquote, with the economic freedom fighters. We've also now seen other markets, as well as the rand, have reacted and are being affected by the fears of a doomsday coalition. This is a clear signal that allowing the ANC and the EFF to take over will result in capital flight and the outright collapse of the South African economy, plunging this country into an economic hardship, the likes of only which we've witnessed in countries like Venezuela and Zimbabwe. Earlier today, when we read the newspapers, we were shocked to learn that Shell is set to withdraw its operations from South Africa. And that comes just days after learning that Anglo American may similarly divest from South Africa. These are clear and present warning signs that investor confidence is already plummeting because of the prospect of an ANC-EFF government, which will lead to a jobs bloodbath and will plunge many, many more people into poverty in South Africa. This is a time to remind ourselves of Maya Angelou's famous saying that when somebody shows you they are the first time, believe them. In this case, we should now say that senior leaders in the ANC and EFF have shown us who they are and that their plan is to form a doomsday coalition, and we should believe them. Those analysts who dismiss an interrogation of these facts as mere scaremongering are engaged, frankly, in irresponsible commentary based on woefully inadequate and potentially willfully naive determination to turn a blind eye to the very real prospect of what is happening before us. But we're not going to turn a blind eye as the DA to this existential crisis that faces our country and our economy, because the future is very, very clear to see and the facts are right before our eyes. And we believe it's our patriotic duty and our duty as the official opposition in the country to inform the electorate that the future of every South African family is in danger from the impending takeover by the ANC-EFF Doomsday Coalition. Those of you who know me and have been covering me for years know that I don't believe in beating around the bush, and I've always been a straight shooter. Some don't like it, but there it is. So here is the straight-up truth. Provincial and national coalition governments between the ANC and the EFF and their fellow radical populists will set South Africa on fire. The same straight-shooting message is what you're about to see in our latest advertisement. And you will see that if voters sit back and allow the ANC and the EFF to take over South Africa, our country will literally be burnt to ashes. To be absolutely clear, so there can be no misunderstanding, the visuals you're about to see do not represent what the DA wants for South Africa, nor what we want to see happening in South Africa. They represent the fear of what will happen if voters do not go out in large numbers on the 29th of May and stop the Doomsday Coalition dead in its tracks. Unsettling as it is to watch the video and confront the reality of our South Africa's dream will burn if we allow the ANC and EFF Doomsday Coalition, it also ends on a hopeful note by showing that not all is lost. The video tells voters that it's not yet too late to prevent the doomsday from happening and to keep the South African dream alive. The final seconds of the advertisement offers voters the solution to prevent South Africa from going up in flames. For the simple truth conveyed by this advertisement is that the only way to prevent an ANC-EFF doomsday coalition from taking place is by people coming out in their millions and voting for the DA. Just like we've been the only party honest enough to warn South Africans about the risk of the doomsday, the DA has also consistently been the only party that offers voters a clear way out. Once again, I quote from the speech I delivered from the floor of Congress in April last year. I quote, "Fortunately, there is one and only one insurance policy against the ANC-EFF Doomsday Coalition, and that is to vote for the Democratic Alliance, because the Democratic Alliance is the only party that is big enough and strong enough to stop the doomsday. The DA is the only party with the size, the resources, and the track record to oppose and defeat the Doomsday Coalition." Unquote. But the DA's efforts to prevent doomsday did not end there. We're also walking the talk. As I made clear at the Congress last year, the very reason why we committed at that Congress to what we called at the time the Moonshot Pact, bringing opposition parties together for the first time in 30 years to prevent a bulwark against us, now known as the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa, it was born out of the determination to defeat a doomsday coalition. So right from the start, we've been honest enough to take the risk of the doomsday so seriously that we went on to take the historic decision to reach across the aisle and work with like-minded opposition parties to prevent the doomsday. There are now 11 parties part of the Multi-Party Charter. The moment that the DA has been warning about has now arrived. In just 24 days, the country will go to the polls and vote in what will be the most important election since 1994. As the DA's latest advertisement indicates and demonstrates, we face a clear binary choice in this election. And that binary choice will determine whether we resuscitate our South African dream or whether our dreams are literally burnt to ashes. After the 29th of May, South Africa will either be governed by a doomsday coalition between the ANC and the EFF and possibly MK, as well as many smaller parties that are outside of the multi-party charter. Or South Africa will be governed by a new multi-party charter government, with the DA fulfilling its role as a strong anchor party based on our size and our track record of good governance. So I call on all South Africans to engage seriously with the urgent message conveyed by this particular advertisement. I repeat that there's only one way to prevent an ANC-EFF doomsday, and that is to vote for the DA. In this election, a vote for the DA is not only a vote for a strong and experienced party to anchor a new government to rescue South Africa, it's also a vote for the biggest possible roadblock to prevent and oppose the ANC-EFF nexus wherever it rears its ugly head across the country. And so my message to the people of South Africa is clear. Don't be responsible for unleashing the doomsday on South Africa by staying at home on election day. Don't sit back and allow the ANC and the EFF to determine your and your family's future. It's now the patriotic duty of every single South African, and every freedom-loving South African who wants to rescue our country from a doomsday scenario to make sure that they come out and vote on election day on the 29th of May. Because in this election, the stakes are too high to stay at home. Thank you very much.